Don't you do that. Don't you do that.
Okay, no, I'm gonna ask y'all this question.
Don't you do that.
Don't you do it.
No, listen to this. If your dudes were worth $10 million, they got all this money, do you think you'll be more of a catering person?
Absolutely,
Because
I'll have less things to do.
No, I'll just be catering different things. I'll be catering a private jet with his money. But we cater to the circumstance we're in.
nah, see, that ain't right. That's not right.
Why?
I used to date somebody back in the day. That motherfucker catered like I was a billionaire. But it was just something that they enjoyed
How
doing
did she
for me.
cater that she was a billionaire if she didn't have no
No, I
money?
said she catered like I was a billionaire.
Yeah.
So I walked in, and she would work. She worked like anybody else. She had a child, but she would cook. She would cook in her panties. She would do all kind of shit.
Okay, so why y'all didn't stay together?
Yeah, right.
Right. She's so damn catering.
Yeah, why y'all didn't stay together?
Where you at,
I'm
girl?
just saying, why y'all didn't
I'm
stay
giving y'all
together?
the example of catering. I didn't say this was my life partner.
No, what I'm saying to you is, like you may have been that person for her that she feel like I did all this shit, and then we still didn't end up together.
And
So
then you
fuck
go
that
to the
shit.
next-
And then after the next dude, she probably didn't treat them as good.
I can't talk what she did before or after.
No, but what
Only
I'm
thing I
saying,
can
you
say
get
is
my
my
point
experience.
though.
I get it.
She did all that, and y'all didn't stay together.
I wanted to talk real quick about Candace Burruss and her husband divorcing, but maybe I'll say that for Monday.
Candace, what now?
She's a she's a she's a entertainer, like producer and stuff like that. She's divorced. Her and her husband getting a divorce, and now he's contesting the prenuptial.
So why should we be interested?
Essence had written an article.
Essence. I don't even want to talk about Essence.
We don't
One
want to talk about
time,
Essence. But let
I
me
mean, Essence wrote an article.
Well, the entitled it was an op-ed. They titled it "The Burden of Black Women Breadwinners" because she makes more and she's worth more than the husband.
Well, I've said that is always a problem, and it's getting compounded today because only 44% of the American workforce is male. 56% is female. Only 32% of the college undergraduates are male. Only 34% of 36% of the college grad students are male, and only 28% of each year's high school graduates are male. So, whatever in the devil the people have been doing running this country over the last half century has essentially destroyed its masculine component. Now, that's not healthy. I don't care what some freak feminist wants to think about it, considering masculinity per se to be toxic, would be saying, well, we could be staying in these caves because that masculinity is the same thing that moved us from cave to condo, probably in response to the caveman wanting to get laid by his cave woman and being inspired. He did something that moved humanity an inch closer to where we are now.
But if a wife makes way more money and is worth way more money than her husband, and he did sign a prenup, should she and should he contest the prenup? Because now he is saying, well, when I signed a prenup, it was under distress because I didn't have my legal representation with me and we were about to get married.
That
So
fits into that whole thing about weak boys over mamaed who are helpless and entitled, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Men need to be tougher than that.
So you don't believe in women paying a ex-husband alimony or letting him take half of her money, wealth, or whatever?
Well, it can, if it's in the bank, rules are rules. And if you want to be equal, then you get held by the same standards the guys get held to. Community property in California, if the guy makes $100,000 and he's married and she makes 10, then everybody gets $50,000 plus half of the 10, which is 5. So each person would get 50,000 and $5. So the woman's putting nothing in there but $10, but she gets one half of the kitty. That's the way they do it in California. And if you want to have that kind of inequity, then it should apply both ways. That's what you're asking for. So what is the old proverb? Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it.
But should he? But if you were as a man, if you sign a prenup and you both, you're getting a divorce, should you contest it? Because a lot of times people contest, man or woman, so they could get more.
Well, yeah, it's just par for the course, especially when people wind up hating each other. I
You know,
mean, it's interesting. Another statistical thing, judges getting shot, killed, or severely injured in court. Almost invariably, the judges were handling divorce or domestic matters. Very, 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 very seldom does it ever involve a criminal court judge. Why? Because people are most passionate about those they were closest to. Either they love them or they hate them to extreme degrees.
okay.
And we've had some killings around Shelby County where I've been practicing, was practicing for 50 years. So, yeah. And just about every instance, it involved some kind of domestic matter.
But is there a burden, a black woman burden, breadwinners? Or black women who are is that a thing
That's
now?
what's going on. Look, the
Black women
last time I spoke
breadwinners
at a
is
black college, I asked the dean, I said, I guess the guys don't like me. Where are the guys? He said, Judge, this is just about all of the boys in this school. I said, this few? Said, yeah, they just don't come into college anymore. So that's what's happening. You're getting these vocational training things. You hear all of the woke folks saying, you don't need to go to college, you need the vocational training. Well, the girls are going to schools where the teachers in elementary, junior high, or middle school and high school, they tend to be females. They tend to be black females. So you get the interesting situation where black children are doing better in a public school than any other ethnic group or demographic, but they're black females because most of the teachers these days in large urban school districts turn out to be black and female. So the boys are being left behind. It is totally irrelevant to some young boy growing up in the hood with his school teacher, big woman with all of these spangled bracelets around her arms, leading them, and the itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. What's that got to do with him? And he's just left out of the process. The female teacher is anti-masculine to begin with, and she doesn't like him because he's going to grow up to be something that she doesn't like. And her general attitude is, what is he good for? What is he going to be good for? And if you can't say, then he gets raised like he's not going to be good for anything. So the boys don't get a good education in academics. And when it comes to vocational opportunities, yeah, they're there, but I'm seeing predictions that AI is going to make most of the service industry, most of the vocational aspirations of people obsolete in 2 decades. So that looks like a dead end. You get into it at 20, and by the time you get 50, you are looking for a job that isn't to be found. So it's nothing wrong with having vocational skills, but don't encourage the boys to neglect their intellects and academics because that's where the money is going to be. That's where the design of the AI devices is going to come from. That's where the management of these circumstances is going to come from. That's where the people who will develop skills in being reasonable, rational, logical, analytical, objective, detached, and cool, chilled out, and dispassionate when they do assessments. That's where they will come in. So we are wiping these people out. We have a situation right here where almost all of the folk coming through the system in Memphis, Shelby County, Tennessee, almost all of them are male, just a few females. But 60% of the criminal court judges are black and female. We only have one male black judge out of the whole bunch. And that
Hold on.
just doesn't give the majority of the people coming through there anybody in court who's understanding of their circumstances and knows what he is listening to or she's listening to when it comes to the administration of justice. And there is an emotive component that is being interjected into everything that gets it out of the way. Uh, I'm going to cut this off very quickly, but we all know the Miranda rights. You have a right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used in evidence against you. You have a right to an attorney, etc. We know those from watching movies and television for the last half century. The Miranda rights were established in the early 1960s, but today we wouldn't probably not have the Miranda rights because too many of the judges would be emotively tied up in what was going on, and they would not be able to divorce themselves from the identity of the defendant and the rights that he had as a citizen. And Miranda was a pretty lousy person. His friends wound up murdering him, allegedly. So we have to take this emotionalism out of the courts and return them to being dispassionate, objective, analytical, reasonable, and rational. And we were getting far away from that now, and too often it's somebody's feelings become more important than the law. That's not good for anybody.
So if this continues on this way when it comes to the black men and black women, then black women, the burden of black women breadwinners is going to continue. If
Yeah,
the
and you started this off with Nikki Giovanni 58 years ago when she was the black poetess, the late one that everybody on the feminist side idolizes. She was traveling all over America talking to large audiences on college campuses, telling the girls that they didn't need a husband, men were poisonous. If you wanted to have a child, go pick somebody on his physical appearance and intelligence, get knocked up, and then don't tell the SOB he was the daddy, because the worst thing you can do with a child is to involve a man in the child's raising. So that was being spread around by her and a lot of other people, and it is taking effect. And we have this, so this just compounds the problem. You have women who ideate on that love thing. They play house when they're little bitty girls, and they grow up and they get with their friend girls in junior high school and in college, and they're talking about boys, but they can't find one because the boys act too sissified. They act like girls with dicks, and then they make more money. So you're talking about this massive role reversal in a society that's still composed of human beings, and it just doesn't work well when you have a situation where there is a drastic difference in income between the masculine side of the family and the female side of the family, feminine side of it. It just doesn't work. But then it depends on what you're doing. You may have a woman that's very wealthy, but her husband winds up General so and so. So he's got,
What if she's wealthy and he's not wealthy, but he's very well off?
well, that's where you get the classical political science differentiation. The upper class or caste consists of the entrepreneurs, the landed aristocracy, the military. You deal with the intelligentsia. See, Albert Einstein was certainly not one of the rich folk in the world, but Albert Einstein was, you know, by all in metrics, objectively would probably be the closest thing to a Jewish Messiah that you could get. Getting outside of the metaphysics, there is no one person in this world's history that has had more influence on the outcomes of intellect and human existence. We have had the Cold War because of the discoveries of Einstein. We have had space open up to our exploration because of Einstein. We have had the things, in fact, everything we can see has had an explanation that is yet to be disproved in more than 100 years of people trying very hard to disprove what he came up with, and he still proved correct. He even surprised himself. He said some of my predictions I could not accept, but they turned out to be correct. He said some of the things that my equations came up with, I had no idea they'd come up with. So this kind of person, do you put them just in a scale of how much money they make? You can take all of the billionaires we have right now. You can take all of the presidents we've had. You can take all of the Buffetts and the Soros and all of the rest of them, and they don't even hold a candle to the searchlight that was Albert Einstein. So if the woman may be very rich, but she's got an Albert Einstein at home, that is an equality because what you're doing isn't always dependent upon cash flow. Sometimes it's ideas. Sometimes you have a General Eisenhower who has an interesting historic claim to fame. He was the commanding general of more soldiers than any other general in world history. At the end of World War II, he had 12 million men in uniform under his direct command. So, are you going to sit there and say he doesn't make as much money as Carnegie, so therefore he didn't make as much money as Rockefeller, therefore Eisenhower was less important? No, you can't say that. The outcome for the whole world and all of the billionaires, well, they didn't have billionaires so much then, all of the multimillionaires in the world depended upon what he did.